So my name is GG Knoth, and I'm 44.
Gigi, we came together organically. I like to let people know kind of how these interviews happen. I think it was a Twitter post that you may have liked or shared that I posted, and then I messaged you and told you about the interviews and requested some of your time. And at first, I think you were like, "What is wrong with her?" But then, but then here we are, and I'm so grateful because I'm very interested to hear your story. And just in the bio that you gave, had enough for a million questions. But I want to start with one, and then we'll go from
Okay.
there. Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Um, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
Oh, Lord have mercy. I think it depends on whether or not I've had coffee yet. If it's pre-coffee, I think that the red hair is a good warning label. I think if it's after coffee, it's all good. Um, in my private practice, a lot of my patients are like, "There's no way you're an introvert. No way." And I'm like, "No, I am. I like go and hide, from people whenever I can. Like at parties, I'm always like in the kitchen cleaning, so I don't have to like small talk." So I honestly don't know because I try really hard to be social and not be awkward, but I always feel like in my head I'm horribly awkward, so I never really know.
But yes, I agree. I think sometimes, like I said, people may mistake the outgoing and bubbly, energetic, friendly for the extrovert. But I don't think that's always the case, as I'm sure you've seen in, like you said, in your practice and in some of your. So tell me, there was, like I said, so many things in your bio that were interesting to me. So why don't we start with all the animals?
Oh, all the animals. All right. So a few years ago, we bought a tiny farm. We have a couple acres. It's really small. I mean, when we first moved here, we moved from the city, so we were like, we have so much land, but now it already feels small. And we're like, we need 40 acres and to put our house right in the middle of it. So we have just a tiny little farm, and we've got I think like 10 ducks and 20 something chickens and bees. And then inside the house, it's just normal things like cats and dogs.
So with the bees, do you procure honey or do you just have the bees for fun?
Well, bees are only so much fun, but I mean, some people really aren't bothered. And recently, I don't get stung a lot, but recently, when I've gotten stung, my body has reacted a little bit more. So I've kind of just let them be for, haha. I've just kind of let them alone for a while. But yeah, we have on several occasions. We do a honey harvest twice a year in Florida. There's the sort of the wildflower harvest, and then there's the Brazilian pepper harvest, and then the honey looks completely different. It's really yellow at one time, and it's like a really dark kind of brown. And
How
my daughters help.
cool.
They're like really cool around the bees. Doesn't bother them at all. They don't even wear nets.
That's
I
amazing.
know.
I
People are
love
like,
honey.
what? Who would do that to children? Like, yeah, they don't want to wear the nets, so they're just like, we're fine.
Jeez.
And the secret is if you're cool around bees, they don't sting you. So my kids don't ever get stung. And I'm like all geared up, and they'll still like find the like one little hole, and they're like, gotcha.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine at all. I do want to ask you about your mental health advocacy and your road to being a therapist and your approach to that. So, if you don't mind kind of giving us that journey and how that became something that you wanted to do.
So I went to school originally for advertising and graphic design. So when I all through college, I worked in internships at giant New York ad agencies, and then I got headhunted down to Florida, and I spent about 10 years working in advertising, trying to convince people to buy things, right? Like, you need this for your life to be better. But when you're working in advertising, behind the scenes, you're learning about the product, you're learning about what it does. And I was always really interested in healthcare products and healthy eating and things that actually did help people, not the crap they don't need, like, you know, fast food and liquor. I mean, you could argue that they do, but whatever. So long story short, I had a car accident. The car accident, after 2 years of doing everything the doctors told me, I found acupuncture. It was the only thing that helped. And I, like a completely crazy person, quit my job. I was making a great living, I quit my job and I started all over. And I always knew mental health was something I was really passionate about, personally and professionally. And so I kind of gravitated towards specializing in mental health in my holistic practice. Let me just say, I am pro medication. I am not a holistic provider that thinks that drugs are evil, especially when it comes to psychiatric. I think that they are a godsend and really necessary. But for some people, they can do a mix of holistic and medication. For some people, holistic is sufficient. Mostly what I like to do, and I think this is just part of the Midwesterner in me, is I like to get to know people. I always wanted to have a practice where people didn't feel like, hurry up and tell me what's wrong with you in 5 minutes and then I'm going to leave. And by the way, you're going to sit like naked in a room for 45 minutes before I come rush you through what's wrong with you. So I spend time with my patients, and I started having people say, I don't even go to my therapist anymore. I just come here. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want you to do that. They're like, no, you helped me. They did it. And I'm like, ooh. So I went home one day and I said to my husband, I'm like, I think I want to add counseling to my office. He's like, great, do it. And I was like, oh, I thought you were going to say no, and then I could like bug out of it, but no. So I ended up getting my PhD in counseling. And so now I combine the two. You know, like if somebody needs counseling, I kind of send them towards my counseling practice. If they need the holistic, we kind of go that way. And what I basically try to do is make people feel heard. So it's kind of weird to be sitting here talking about myself, because mostly I like to do what you're doing. I want someone to tell me their story, and I want to know how I can walk with them and be helpful. How can I help?
I love that. And my fiance just says I'm nosy, but I really like to know people's stories just because I like to understand where they come from, so that, like you said, I don't necessarily think I can help them maybe in that interaction, but I'd like to understand how better to communicate with them, and maybe how their responses and where they're coming from, versus taking things at face value and thinking it's all about me and reacting to them in a certain way.
And you know what? The science would support your position. And we all talk to ourselves in our heads. Nobody wants to admit that they do, but we all have this sort of inner monologue going on. They say, science shows that people who talk and listen to a lot of people are better able to, in their head, give themselves lots of arguments, right? Because if you're not just one-sided, like you don't only hang out with people who agree with you, but you hear lots of stories, lots of positions, it makes you more empathic. It makes you more open to changing your mind. It makes you a better negotiator. It makes you a more diplomatic. And it helps you when you're arguing with yourself, trying to make a decision. It helps you have more voices and perspectives in your head. So you end up making better choices in life. So bully for you.
It's incredible to just hear people's experiences.
It's a gift when you listen.
I agree. I totally agree. Okay, so before I ask any other questions, I want to know about the art behind you.
Oh, so that so some of it is my daughter's art. We have two girls, and I do not believe that anyone is not creative. I absolutely refuse to have anyone that comes into my house tell me they're not creative. So usually when I have someone come over, and we haven't had many people over of late, obviously,
Right.
I make them do some kind of art or craft or something. And so everything behind us is either something we've done or the kids have done or my husband's done, because I think everyone's an artist and everyone's creative. And I'd rather put someone I love's art on the wall than someone I like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not into home goods, so I just, I don't get my stuff there, and we're always changing it. Like, we'll literally take a canvas off the wall and paint, like this pineapple one my daughter just did. So we like take the canvas off, she repaints it, back up on the wall it goes.
It's so neat.
Yeah.
I like the empowerment, and I'm big on that too, is making people feel like the possibilities are endless and that they can do whatever they want to do, especially the younger ones.
Absolutely. And I am a feminist, and I'm raising daughters, which initially terrified me because I'm a tomboy, and I was like, I'm getting boys for sure. No, I got girls. And I was like, I don't even like pink. What am I going to do? And you know what? I've grown into it, and I love having daughters, and they like play with their Barbies and they play with their trucks. And like, there's none of this like, oh, girls do this and boys do that. None of that in my house. But every opportunity we can have to build them up and give them opportunities to say, well, do I like this or do I like this? Let me try this. Let me try that. And like, let's encourage it all and see what sticks, you know?
So, what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
I like to sing in public loudly. It's like one of the few things I will do that is completely out of character for me. I really like to sing. Like, I will do karaoke with you. Um,
Not with
I
me.
like to sing in church. I miss church because I haven't been able to go since March, and I like love to sing. I love it. When I was in high school, we did concert choir and we performed. I see it's your fiance's jersey in the back. I'm from Detroit. That's an
Yep.
Yay, go Captain. I'm from Detroit. The Fox Theater is really famous. Like, our high school actually performed at the Fox Theater. I like singing. So I don't know. I think most people wouldn't think I'd want to get up and perform.
I would not have guessed, but yeah, as far as doing karaoke with me, no thank you. I'll go watch you. But I will not get up there and sing.
It's really just an excuse to have a Guinness before I go. It's
There
fine.
you go. I like it. I like it. That's awesome. No, I wouldn't have thought that. So you brought up, the art behind you and having people over, and you haven't obviously had very many people over. Just
Um,
curious about what you see the effects of our new normal having on people you've been talking to.
Here's what I'm going to say. We introverts have been preparing for this our whole lives. I will tell you that, I mean, never as a practitioner as do I tell someone like, oh, I feel that way too. Like, when someone's sharing, I listen. But from the introverts at the beginning, I heard guilt. Like, I'm kind of happy. Like, no one's showing up at my house. I don't have to give excuses to not go out. Like, I'm really kind of able to finally reboot. The extroverts in my life and practice are not happy campers at all. And so for them, the isolation has been really difficult. The just the joy they get from being with people and having face-to-face conversations. I mean, for me, talking over the phone like this or in person, it doesn't matter to me. But for them, it matters to be able to touch someone's leg when they're listening to a story, to say, I get you, I feel you. And they're really missing that. So for me, my husband's always like, don't tell people that's interesting. It makes them sound like a science project. And he's right. But I find it really interesting, and I've been humbled by how different we all are. And even though my superpower is kind of social distancing, I really have a newfound respect for the people who have found ways to stay connected in what has become the new normal, and their commitment to making sure other people don't feel isolated. So it's really been interesting to watch those people, not as a science experiment, but interesting to watch that, how they've acclimated or tried to.
Yep, and everyone's so. You said how different we all are, but at the same time, we're all so much the same. And that's one of the goals of doing these interviews, is really showing people all of our difference, but all the different ways that we can connect, which is so interesting to me. But what you said is interesting to me because you talk about the extroverts. What would you say to someone that might be watching who's living with really close to someone that is an extrovert, that maybe they could do to help that person?
Listen, put your phone down, put it down, walk away, and listen. Ask questions that aren't leading. Talk. Give them your full attention. That is what I see. Well, listen, even introverts want it. They want someone to be interested in how they're feeling, not in an obligatory way, but engage them, because extroverts power up by interacting with people. So if you give them your full attention, you fill their tank up. What could be better than that?
Nothing. I
What could be
think
better?
that even for me, especially with how much technology has come into our lives and how at our fingertips literally everything is, that just to have someone, like you said, engage in the conversation with you, especially now when those conversations are so few and far between, is so rewarding.
It's been very needed. I mean, I will say, obviously, as an acupuncturist, I have not figured out how to play darts and act, do acupuncture from afar. So that whole part of my practice is completely on hold. But my counseling practice is alive and well.
Yeah. I was reading an article the other night about the spike in depression and anxiety during the last few months and the impact that's having on our society. So
it is. I'm concerned about what it's going to be long term, because I think there are sort of these arbitrary deadlines that we all have in our head, like, oh, I just have to make it to this, right? And then we make it to that, whatever that deadline is, and they're like, oh, we're not done. And then expectations are the mother of all our happiness and unhappiness, right? How the discrepancy between our expectations and the reality is a good gauge of how unhappy or upset you're going to be. And so I think that's the thing, is I keep seeing it be really cyclical, like you're fine. You're like, I can do this. And you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I don't like that. You know what I mean? And for some people, it's just like, allow there to be that ebb and flow. It's not normal to be happy all the time. It's okay. Like, it's okay to be blue. You're allowed to lament the life that is missing right now. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And I will say this one thing. I have so many people who sit in front of me privately and feel like they're the only one struggling with something. And I say, of course, I could never point out to you who else deals with this, but I will say, you're not alone. And any counselor or therapist or psychiatrist, psychologist or social worker, they ask them, they'll tell you, you are not alone. You are really not alone. We just don't want to tell anyone, because sometimes people don't respond correctly. They don't know what to say. And you think that because they didn't respond correctly, they are thinking something about you, and they're not. They're like, oh, them too. But they don't say that. So you're just, feeling, I don't know, embarrassed or ashamed that you said anything at all, which is kind of why I write the books I write. I try to normalize what a lot of people keep to themselves.
I think that's very respectable and very needed. The interview that I just took off of Instagram and put on YouTube this week was a 23-year-old who I connected with organically, just like you and I. And she shares on a regular basis through her posts on Instagram her struggles with depression and anxiety. And that was actually the little clip that I put up from it yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but that was the clip that I shared, was her talking about how when she finally opened up, how she realized it was very healing for her because people actually started opening up to her back.
It's a big thing. I did that at my church once at a mom's group. I got up and talked about anxiety and depression really openly. And I could tell there were people in the room that are like, I came here for something light and funny. Why are you doing that? But you know what? It was worth it, because there were a few women who came and found me later, and they're like, thank God. I thought I was the only one and I wasn't safe. And I was just like faking fine in this room full of people who look happy. So I'm a very big advocate, obviously, because of my professional life. But I mean, who doesn't know somebody in their personal life who hasn't struggled or isn't still struggling with some kind of mental health issue? I am extremely passionate about taking away the stigma and the shame that people have. I want to make it safe to talk about. I don't want it to be one of those things where if people take it out of the box, they feel like they can't ever put it back. Not a big fan of a diagnosis following someone around for the rest of their life. Like, oh, this is my friend Susie Bag of Donuts. She's the depressed one. Like, why? Do you mean, like, why do we do that to people?
Yep. No, and I agree. I think we've come a long way, but we still have a lot further to go with mental health awareness and acceptance and understanding that this is real. It is not something that you can just sweep under the rug, and people need to be able to talk. So I'm really glad that you're someone that they can talk to. I know I would come and see you. Anything else you'd like to share with us before I ask you my last question?
Oh boy. Last question. Well, so, I mean, you connected with me through one of my author pages, and I'm terrible with social media because even online, I'm an introvert. and you have to promote yourself a little bit. And so, like, whenever I have a book like about to come out, I'm like, I'll peek my head out. And so I have my one book out. It came out a year ago, but my next book, unintentionally prophetic, is called Pain is My Spirit Animal. And I'm exploring pain as human beings experience it mind, body, heart, and soul. And so I'm writing poetry that sort of examines all the different ways we can suffer and struggle as people, and hopefully it's not a bummer. Like there'll be an uptick, just like in my last book. It swings up at the end, don't worry. But that's kind of been my passion project about as I've been sitting at home. I don't share very well with other people. I try to, but I'm better at listening. But my poetry is kind of where I talk about the feels.
That's
So
awesome. And is the book coming out? Is it out yet? Is it available for pre-order?
I have this one's my one that I already did.
Okay.
And this one came out last year. The new book, I just got the cover from the illustrator. Her name's Fiona Jade. She's amazing. That just came through. My editor is going through the book. That one's going to come out, I think, in September if we're still on our schedule. So coming up.
Awesome. Well, do me a favor, put the links to your book as well that is currently out, and then start talking in the comments about the book that's coming. And I'll share. So definitely send me whatever, and I can put it out there because I think that the things you speak of are very important, and I myself would like to read them. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very. You have an amazing gift. So thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And last but not least, if you, once COVID is under control, but if you were around and about and you had an opportunity to hold up a sign or just tell people one thing about GG, what is the one thing you would want people to know?
I'm listening.
I love it. I love it.
It's an incredible thing you do. I have to say, when we first connected and I started looking you up, I'm like, this woman, yes. It's a beautiful thing you do. I want the world to want to hear each other's stories.
Thank you.
We need that.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful thing you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to
done.
keep talking and keep sharing and keep hoping that, that like you said, that when someone sees something, they're like, I'm not by myself. They got this too.